And we're live.
Hello, my name is Paul. I'm here at the SAA headquarters to produce a live demo of soft pastel painting. I'll be working with Unison half stick pastels, very soft and very good to work with, and I'll be working on sanded card made by Senilia. I'll go straight into the painting. The subject is towards the far end in Bodnant Garden in Conway, near where I live. Very much based on the tree and the river. I'll go straight into the painting, and the first thing is to work with the side of the pastel. That's very important for the first stage of the painting, for the underpainting. I'll start with the sky holes, just very quickly block these in. Pastel painting is quite quick by its nature, and the better results you get is when you work fast and really just start to enjoy moving the colour across the sanded card. I work at 45-degree angles for most of the clouds I do and most of the trees that I do, and that's to give an indication of movement. So that's a tip to just remember, to try and work at 45-degree angles on this first stage. That's the sky holes in position. I'm working with roughly 16 colours today. Again, limited palette you can work with. This is a very dark green colour, and I'm just going to block in around the sky holes the base colours for the pale colour that goes on top. So just block in around this area, this base colour. Try not to go over the base drawing if you can. The base drawing is drawn out in charcoal. I use charcoal sticks quite a lot in my paintings. I really enjoy working with those. These are Coates Willow charcoal. There is a light area over here, but I'm still going to put some shadow around there. Most of the light is coming from the back of this tree and reflecting down onto the river. So got to make sure we don't do too many dark greens there. Whilst I'm working with the dark green, I'll also block in areas around the painting where I see this dark green appearing. So all along that banking there is banks of little bits of trees and bushes, and at the base of the tree there I've also got along this banking some shadow area, so I'll block that in as well in that colour, and along the top of the river just across that banking behind those trees. I'll also at this stage just start to block in the reflections that come off these bushes along this banking area. I'll do that straight away. You'll notice that I've actually gone straight down on that stroke. It's slightly different than the way I've used it above. Whenever I'm doing a reflection or anything to do with water, reflecting in a river or a lake, I'll always work vertical. So it comes straight down. That gives me a sense of reflections. So that's the first little stage. Next is a medium green, and what I'm going to do is build the medium green areas as I see them on this this photograph that I'm working to. So usually it's around the gaps that I've left, still leaving those sky holes, but not as much cover. I'm choosing areas where I'm going to put this green along this the branches, and the way the branches curl over and across the river there. There's a few branches come down there. So block a few greens in there. Always go right to the end of your card if you can, and then when you put your mount over it, it makes sure it fits. Again, it's quite light over here, so I'm not going to put a great deal of shadow area in there. That's the mid green. And then I can see on the picture where other greens come in. Using a slightly different technique, just build up that block, that banking that comes down there and across that way, and then obviously in between these shadow areas along the banking there's a bit of green and there, and that gives me a quick interpretation of the greens as we block them in. Moving on to the light colours, so I'll go through dark, medium and light in all cases. This is the light colour, you can see it on the picture there. I'll block quite a strong light over this side of the river around this tree. The main tree is shaped in there, and I'll just block some pale green across there. Also try and block it in behind the tree, because this is where the light's coming in. So I'm just going to do a slightly different using the edge of the pastel this time, not the flat colour, just to block some colour in there and some colours come along there. There's a single tree up there which I'll just leave for the minute and block these pale colours in. A few pale colours on there, but not many, till I rub that down. Got some pale green coming down here that's just catching the light as it comes through from the back. And the top of that banking there, again, I'll just sketch some light in there, so I know exactly where those lights are coming in. Whilst I've got this in my hand, I'm just going to very gently extend some of this reflection that's coming off these trees here, and that's actually going to go a little bit behind the river as it goes around that side. There is a bit of light here as well, so block a bit of that green in there, and you can see how the picture's starting to come together already. Drop that down. I'm going to bring some really strong light in now, because what I like to do is see the darks and the lights all in this first underpainting. So this particular colour I'm going to put across there. That's just behind this foreground tree. That's where the light is, behind this tree. It's quite dark, this tree. There's light coming behind and all along the top of that bank in there. That tells me straight away where the light's coming from. Around the edge of this tree you can see it's quite light in that area. So very quickly, 45-degree angle again, using the side of the pastel, flat side, block some lights in there. So now I can see the light coming around there. I can see the shape of my tree coming. There's a little bit of strong light here, which is catching this banking. So I'm going to put that in there as well, just to show you where that comes in. And there's little dots of light coming through the trees and catching some of these little grasses. So again, block some light in there so we know we're just about catching the tops of these. Gives you a little bit of sense of light. And also, while I'm here in this area with this colour, I'll block some of this bright light here as well. Not forgetting that there's a shape of there, so that the actual shadow area off that will keep to that shape. So I'm going to make sure that that reflects that above it. Quite a bit of light down here, so I'm going to put some light colour in there as well. I'm going to move on to the water straight away. I'm going to use pale blue. I'm working with a box of colours that I developed with Unison from my own colour range, and then they very kindly put colours together for me for summer, winter, autumn and spring. And I use these in the workshops that I do up and down the country. The colours are very good because obviously you can work with limited palette, which means you don't have to worry too much about the colours that you use, and you just pick up the box and away you go. Very good for plein air when you want to walk anywhere with any distance. So I've just blocked a little bit of the blue in there. I'm actually going to block some of this white in. You see how strong on the reflections? I'm going to block that in very quickly as well. So I know what that's my lightest light. And now I've got my lightest light and I've got my darkest dark, except there is going to be a bit more dark in there. I'm going to use a dark brown now, straight to the dark brown colours. These appear in the shadow areas. So this banking, where it hits the water, is one of the darkest areas on the picture. So I'm just going to block that in first, and that's going to roughly come around the edge of the water there. So I'll just block that in. There's going to be some dark areas on this banking as well. Using the flat side of the pastel, just block that in very roughly, and in there, and then down to the banking here, which is quite dark as well. So make sure we get that darkness in there. Round the back of the banking there, this is where the soil is, right down to the water's edge. We get mud, and that's why I've built that in there. I use this also to block my tree shapes in. I'm going to start to block those in straight away. I'll start with this M1. I use the sharp edge of the pastel and work that tree up into that position very roughly. And as I go up with the tree, I usually do the central column first. That gives me my structure. I'll miss out little areas and follow the shape of this tree. Try and make it less like a totem pole and more off to the side, make it a bit more interesting. As I work up to the top of the tree, I turn the pastel to make sure it goes to thin, like a thin line. So it's a bit thicker there where the base of the trunk is, and then it goes off that way. This one, I'm going to bring up. This is a bit thicker, this one, so I'm going to make this a thicker tree at the base, and it goes in front of this tree that comes up there. So I'm going to bend that one quite a lot over to the right and then take it up to the top. So I've got an interesting shape. I'm going to deal with 3 of the trees. There's quite a clump of trees on the picture, but I'm going to simplify it. I'm going to bring this tree round the back of there now and thin that off to the top. So now I've got 3 structures, and they're all going in different directions. That's going to help me when I put this picture together. On the far banking, similar thing, but very, very lightly done. These are in the distance, so I'm not really too concerned about them being detailed. Whilst I've got this colour in my hand, I will work on what I call the off branches that come off this tree. So I'm going to work some of these in now. They're coming across there, leaning down, and then they actually have some strong branches that come over the river. So I'll just block those in very quickly. That's really for me, so I know exactly where they are. Just block a few in there, very roughly done. It can be very sketchy. The quicker you work, the better. I always say in my workshops, try and do this bit as quick as you can. It's more intuitive, and you'll get a better result. So blocking all these rough blank branches, they're overlapping each other. Some of them going off to the left, some squirting up there, and those going up that side. Not forgetting that there's 2 sides to the tree, so some of these branches are going to go that way. So roughly blocking the shapes of the tree there. So I've got the banking, I've got the shapes of the trees, and the greens are in there. I'm just going to start to build some lighter brown in. This is a path that goes round in front of these trees. I'm going to use the pale brown, medium brown, sorry, it's not the pale colour. Medium brown across there, doing a horizontal sketch. So I'm working this across, sorry, vertical, not horizontal, vertical across the path there. That gives me a bit of a perspective of how that moves around there, and that goes around that corner. The base of this shadow banking here, I'm going to use some of this pale brown in here. The reason being it's quite a shallow river this, and even on the picture I can see the base of the river, so it's not very deep. So we've got a light coating of the brown colour there. That's really like sand at the base of that tree. Also, I'm going to put some of that in there as well along this shadowed edge. Again, going straight down. Every time I go in use water, I'll work straight down, vertical. It's really important that. I'm going to move now on to the dark blue colour. I really want to get more colour into this than is in the picture. And to do that, I want to make the water look a bit more vibrant. So I'm going to use this really strong blue colour and go over very gently the brown. I'm not pressing on. The first stage of pastel painting is to do the first stage as light as you can. I'm hardly touching the surface, but you can see how that shadow now is working a bit better. And then I'm going to work that roughly around there. So that brings a little bit of blue in. I'm also going to do that down here as well, just to make the colours more pleasing to the eye. So I just block that in around that edge. I'm going to just put a bit more pale colour in just before I think about rubbing this down. Let's get some more in there. A bit more here as well on this banking. Come around there. Just a bit of a touch there. I'm going to put some of the light within this tree. You can see there's various little points where light comes through to the front of the tree. So I'm going to block some of those light areas in. You can see them on the photograph. Certain areas where light comes through these branches. This is the first stage, the underpainting. We then rub it down to make it ready for the second stage, which is to tidy up the picture and start to get more detail in. I use a lot of charcoal sticks for that, detailed areas. There's still some dark areas I need to block in on this shadow area here, so I can just see I need to do a little bit of work there so that banking works as best it can. Just bring a few more branches off, overlaps, different shapes, different directions, and that's quite tidy. Just step back a bit so you can see if everything's balanced off okay. And I'm going to rub that down now. Before I do that, it's very important that you clean your hands. Pastel painting does not like damp or wet. It doesn't like dirty hands either. So a wipe, and make sure you dry your hands really thoroughly. It's very important, this. Stress it in the workshops. Really need to keep your hands clean between colours. That way you'll keep the colour vibrant and everything will stay as clear as it looks there. As far as rubbing down is concerned, I use my hands, I use my fingers. I feel it's more tactile. You can get in with your painting. It's very important that you follow the direction of the landscape when you're doing this. The rub down is as important as the pastel application. So we start with this tree here. All I'm going to do is push that colour up. Push it across, miss out those gaps, make sure it stays. So I'm just working on the dark brown now, following the branches right to the end. That helps me establish where those trees are, and really, in my mind, where those branches are going to go and where they join the main trunk of the tree. So I'll deal with this first tree first, get that squashed in. All I'm doing is pushing the pastel into the background. And this means that I don't need to fix it at the end. Just a slight blow. If there's any surface pastel on there, you just need to blow that away. You very rarely find that. The drop on this card is really minimal. So you'll find it quite easy to work with. Once you get this first stage rubbed down as well, it's very much easier on the fingers. Especially developed by Sennelier for pastel painting. So try and follow these tree shapes. You can hear how the noise of the sandpaper is quite loud, but as we put this first layer on, we start to put the second layers on, it gets softer and quieter. So follow these branches all the way to the end. Dark colours first, always remember. Don't go to the light yet, we're working round the light. There's another tree there, so I'll just block that one. That's not going to have a lot of branches on it, so it's quite minimal. Down this side, I'm going to change my tactics slightly because I'm rubbing this banking down. Rub that one first, and this corner. I'm avoiding the greens. I've got the banking here. Usually use a different finger because it's quite tight down here, so I'm going to use my little finger for that, just to blank that dark colour in across there, and that's the banking fixed. A little bit of brown there that I put on before. Need to just squash that down. A good tip is, obviously, I've used two fingers there. I can use these other fingers for the other colours. That saves wiping my hands and washing them all the time. So I'm going to use this forefinger for the green. Now the green, I'm pushed down in blocks because I don't want to overlap those other colours that are in there. So again, I'm rubbing this down at 45 degrees. It gives a sense of movement in the tree, and that's why I do that, and it's something that I'm quite keen to pass on because it's something I learnt and developed. As soon as I started working this way, my pictures really improved a lot. So rub those down at 45 degrees, little blocks of dark green. They're the shadow areas within the tree. Try and avoid, obviously, your sky holes if you can. You don't want to disturb them at this stage. So we'll rub all these dark greens down all across that tree, and very little bit in this area. And that's because that's going to be quite light, so I don't want to disturb that too much. Down this banking, we've got some dark green in there. So I'm following the line of the banking. As it comes down, I'm pushing the paint in that direction. I'm pushing the pastel, the pigment, straight across, down that banking. Same down this one. It's coming this way and round, so push the colour in the direction as it appears on that banking, as it comes round. No more further greens in there. We've got this nice dark blue, brown and green here. Slightly different technique. Whenever you're doing reflections in water or any reflections at all, straight down. I use my thumb for this. I'm going to push that down. Only the dark colours again. I'm not using the lighter colours yet. You can use any of your fingers for this, or a blender. You can buy blending tools. You can use, or cotton buds I use quite a bit as well for some areas. And they're quite a cheap way of actually spreading that colour down there. So we get that shadow in there. A little bit of pastel drop there, just blow it away. Again here, shadow along this banking, straight down. Merge all these colours together and that'll give you that underpainting that we're looking for. Straight down there, shadow areas. It's always worth cleaning your hands now. I've used most of my fingers. So I'm going to wipe the hands before I go to this really important colours, the light colours. I do not want to make them too dark at this stage, so just wipe the hands off. Start with this tree over this side, 45 degrees again. Start rubbing these light colours in all around. Do it quite fast. It's one of the quickest mediums for a full painting that you can wish to find. It's fantastic medium to work with. Now that the papers have been developed and the cards in America and all over, it's really gathered interest now, pastel painting. Our workshops are regularly sold out. So straight across, round the back of the banking there. Change my finger to a clean one just to get some of these really nice subtle areas there under the tree. And that stays, that goes around the edge there, and that'll stay in position. You can see it's not, these little areas, make sure just get those squashed in, squeezed in into the background around that banking. The path that goes around the side, straight across with that. That's the way we want to push that, because that's the way we want to see that perspective. So that comes across there and off to the left. That gives me that nice shape going around there. There's a little bit of green there that I've actually missed, so I'm just going to squash that in with a clean finger around the edge of the banking there. I'm now going to work on this final little bit of the first stage of underpainting. Just checking my thumb's clean. This is quite important. I'm going to drag this area down now, straight down across the painting and round that side there. That gives me that nice light in there. So we'll have a short break there. It's down to the first stage of underpainting, and we'll be back in a few minutes to complete the picture. Thanks.
Let us bring out the artist in you. If you'd like to learn how to paint or improve your painting, the SAA, Society for All Artists, is here to inform, encourage and inspire you every step of the way. When you become an SAA member, you get so many benefits, including the free bi-monthly newsletter Paint, packed with inspiring step-by-step projects, fascinating articles, and detailed information to get your creative juices flowing. Discounts on over 13,000 art products featured on the SAA website and in the Home Shop catalogue, with free order line and free delivery in the UK mainland. A devoted SAA team on hand to answer your questions and give you the confidence and motivation you need to start painting and develop at a pace that suits you. Plus, a free welcome pack filled with gifts and practical help to get you started, as well as the opportunity to make friends with like-minded people.
Best thing about being a member is the inspiration from the magazines, to be able to purchase things at a very reasonable price.
Yeah, you get the reduction on all the materials, the advice you get.
I can shop from home.
It's a community.
It seemed like a very friendly sort of organisation.
If somebody's thinking of joining, don't spend too long thinking. Just join. They'll love it.
And we're back. Hi, welcome back to my demonstration. The first half was to produce the underpainting. Now what I'm going to do is show you how we layer the textures on top of these trees. I'm going to start again with the dark green. This time, slightly different technique. I'm not working quite as quick as I did before. I'm actually going to work little blocks, and this is obviously to represent small groups of leaves now within this, the shape of this main tree, which is the focus in the foreground. You can see how that pastel now is being treated very differently to the first stage. I'm actually considering where I'm putting this. I'm thinking about how these branches are coming off the tree and how there will be some dark areas of shadow within this tree shapes. So I'm working around various areas of the painting, just blocking in, trying again to avoid my tree sky holes, make sure I don't cover those up, and at the same time make sure I get enough shadow to work the next stages. So it's a little bit more care. I'm still working at 45-degree angle as well, which is a really good tip to get your pictures to look not static. That's what you want. You want them to move. Landscapes, you know, windy day, and your trees are moving all the time. You want to try and give that impression as your work evolves. So again, you can see now there's a bit more care and attention to the shapes within the tree. Always like to go quite far out, even though I'm going to mask this off with a mount before we finish. So we got a nice shape there. Start to think about how these overlap the river here, which some of these branches come quite far out and lean across and over the river in front of this tree in the background. Just get that shape in there. That's looking okay. Down at the side here, we've got groups of bushes now, which I'm going to build in. And these are going to make the landscape look a bit more natural. So I'm going to block in some shapes along there and along the top, the bottom of the banking there where it meets the river. I'm going to create some little bushes there, natural bushes that work within there. I am going to block some of this area in just to give us a lead in to that light colour. So I'm just going to put a bit of dark shapes in there just to lift that side a little bit there. Across the back there, I'm just going to drop some dark shapes in to represent some of the bushes coming around. These also are the bushes. They're the same bushes that are on the opposite bank, but this time I'm going to work with them a bit more accurately. So I'm starting to make some grasses, little marks to indicate little plants and things. They're all different bushes and plants. You can make these up as you go along, really. It just gives you an indication on there. They're quite dark on the photograph, so quite often I'll just concentrate on my own painting now rather than the photograph, and get some nice shapes of grasses in there just sitting on the top there. They can hang over the water as well, which can be nice, so just do some of those hanging over there. This banking here, again, there's quite a dark area there, so I'm going to put that back in. You'll see that this second half, the green is even darker because now it's going over an undergreen and some brown, so you're getting nice shades in there within that banking as it comes round there. That's what I'm looking for. As far as these shadows are concerned, I'm going to just block in darker shadows for these bushes that I put in, these little plants at the side of the river. That's my first stage, so I can see those reflecting. I will be lightening up this area quite a lot, but for now I just want to be able to see these reflected plants. I'll put one in there. Again, I'm using the pastel all over as I work with it in different places. That's why it makes it such a quick medium to work with, because you can use the same colour at different places. There's a little group of plants here. I use the sharp edge of the pastel now and just work the grasses up at the base of that tree. Try and make them look as natural as you can. So you've got that shape in there now. I'm going to work with the second colour now in the green, 3 green shades that I use. And this is the mid-green. So I'm going to work with the mid-green now within these shadow areas. So I'm kind of knocking the shadow areas back and bringing some of the lighter colours in. It is a summer, obviously it's a summer painting, so trees are quite full. And the shape of the tree is quite important. It's a good tip when the winter comes to look at your trees, the shapes of them, the skeletons of the trees when all the leaves are off, and do sketches. That's what I do quite a lot. You can understand then how the skeleton of the tree actually is, and you can memorise it, you can sketch it, and that way you can work out in your paintings when it comes to the summer, you just put in meat on the bones of the skeleton. Probably the best way to describe it. So now you can see I'm just blocking in certain areas, not all over. I'm knocking some of this shadow area back a little bit as well. I'm starting to make that tree a bit more full. Around that sky hole again. And just make that more natural. A bit there. I'm going to use this mid-green again on this banking in just in a few areas. This is where the grass is showing through the banking on that side. It's not going to be very light because it's got the shadow of the tree across it. On this area, I'm going to bring in the mid-tones of these colours. It is the summer, so these are going to be quite bright in certain areas. So just bring those in. Start to think about how these might appear over the side of the river. Let's plot that in across there. Same over here. Just put a bit of light on these dark bushes that I put in before, just to lighten up, give it a little hint of this nice summer colour, and make this banking a little bit more natural as well with that colour, bringing it in. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. Bringing in the light colours again. There's quite a lot of light towards the end of this tree, so I'm going to block again 45 degrees. Just get some edging on that side. Try and vary your stroke this time. It's not all 45 degrees. Sometimes it's quite a good idea just to go that way occasionally as you build up the painting. Obviously with a quick demo like this you can't really take too much time over. Otherwise we'll upset Gary if we run over too long. So all I'm doing here is a very quick version of what I would do in my normal painting, where I'd spend about 10 hours on. Okay, so quickly blocking some light there. Start to think more about this, coming over the river here. So I'll start to block in the light colour some of these long branches that are coming out over here. They're quite interesting. So got to follow those shapes and bring them out over the river so I know where they are. A couple of ones up here that come out quite a long way as well, so let's think about that. Using this green, again, let's get some more light in this background area where this tree is. Mainly in this area, this is where the light is, in there, and in between the gaps in the tree, we can put some light in there, so that we can really get a sense of where that light's coming from, which is around the back there. There's a tiny bit of light here that comes off this banking. I'm going to block that in very briefly. I'm going to switch very quickly now to the charcoal sticks. I use these a lot. These are willow charcoal made by Coates. You can buy these from the SAA website, obviously. I'm going to use these. I use them all the time. I'm a real fan of charcoal stick. First thing I'm going to do is create this tree, make it look more realistic. So using the side of the charcoal stick, I'm going to get more of a sense of the dark shapes that come through this tree now. And this time I'm going to build it up a bit more, so that when I've got a branch coming off there, for instance, I'm going to take it that way. I just turn the charcoal stick and make it thinner. That's the key. So it comes round there, thicken that up a bit, across there, and then I make it very thin just by rotating the charcoal. So the charcoal stick comes round there, and then as I get to the end, I rotate it. and that gives me a really fine edge to the charcoal stick, and that gives me that fine branch. I'll do one on here very quickly as well. That comes up there. With this one, we're bending this off to the right a bit, so let's get that in, get some nice thin shapes there. Goes around there, down the edge. Same with this tree. Let's get that one blocked in now. I have to work a bit quicker. And then that goes off that way. So I'm making more of a sense of these trees. Now I can start to build these side branches a bit more as well. So I'll use the charcoal stick for that. Take them up there. As I rotate the charcoal stick, I'll get that fine point that I need for these branches. That one can come off there. Let's bring one that way. You can more or less guess where these are. I'm not really looking at the picture anymore. I'm actually working with my own painting, just trying to get a sense of natural, the way these branches will naturally fall. That's because I've studied them quite a lot in the winter, as I say, to work out how the shapes work within the picture. We're going to take that, I'm going to take that one off there, quite a strong branch that way, because I think that would be quite nice to split those branches. Got one going up there. I'll very quickly block these in. I usually take quite a long time over these branches and twigs, but I'll just block these in very quickly. Up there, one goes up there. I've got one that way, all leaning in the right direction. Just a couple more. And then I'll need to block in this one very quickly again. Because this is on the other banking, I'm not going to make that too detailed. Just put a few twigs in there. I'll join them up when I rub that down a bit. Just get those in very briefly on that side. I'm going to go around the edge of the river now. This is quite an important bit. This is where the shadow, real strong shadow of the banking. Make sure this banking here is deeper than the one over there. That will give you the perspective. Let's just jot that in. Scribble that in across there. Also, I want to get the reflections of these trees in very quickly as well. So I'm going to roughly just shadow that tree there. I've got one here. Take that one down. It's quite important not to forget your shadows in the water. That's quite a thickish one, so I'm going to press on a bit more on that one. And then that one, this group of three there roughly. Try not to do too much there, just a hint. Underneath these greens that I've put here is where the banking reaches the river. So I need to block that in very quickly as well. And the edge of the banking as it comes around there. So I'll block those in quite quickly. All those dark shadow shapes in there. Across that banking. Put a bit underneath the plants as well. Again, that'll give you more texture there. Around the edge of this one, I'll need some shadows. So I'm going to block some of those in. And this time, once I block the shadow in on that edge, I'm going to just roughly take it across. That's just a very stylized version of a rough path going across there. So, side of the charcoal stick, very softly done. Just run a few pebbles to give a bit of texture on that side. I need to now lighten up the base of this water to make sure that I'm bang on with that. I'm going to use quite a bright blue just to spark this colour up a bit. Just going either side of that reflection, just bring some nice blue in there. Again, it's partly to lighten up the water. It's very grey and not very attractive in the photograph, to be honest. So I'm bringing my own colours in now just to spark it up a bit. A little bit too much there. So I'm going to tone it down and get that light in there. In between the tree there, just a little dint of light, a little dint of light there, and then quite a bit of light in that corner there where the river comes round. Get that in. I'm going to bring some purple in, some light purple over this side as well. Again, just to make the picture more attractive as that colour comes round. I'm going to rub this down. I do it slightly different. I'm going to keep that quite clean at the minute. I'm not going to rub that down. I'm going to leave it pure. But I'm going to rub down this area. This is where the reflections are. So I'm going straight down again. Try and tone some of these colours back. Behind there, just rub that in between the trees, just slightly there. Just have to tidy that bit up there so it goes round the back of the river. Just need to smooth that light colour off there because I don't want that to be too strong. Just get that banking in. Usually finish off with a lot of my paintings with Pastel pencils. Use Derwent, you can get them on the SAA site as well. Derwent pencils, just to finish off some detail, but this is a very quick demo, so I won't be using those today. Just show you how you can block these in. Again, I've got some colours here that I want to make sure that this shadowing around this corner actually works. That goes around there. Another trick with water is to get it looking like it's ripply rather than like a lake, which might be completely static. A good idea is just to use the sharp edge of your white pastel and start to just put little thin lines across. That represents the ripples on the water. They're not going to be too many. I will run some over here because it's quite a dark flat area and I want to make sure that's not too unattractive. So I'm going to bring some across there and then across the middle as well. I'll put quite a few on because it's a demo. I want to make sure that we understand what we're doing there. And I'm going to rub these down. So you put them on and you rub them down. That then tones them back, makes them part of the background. I'm also, with the water, going to rub across as well. It's quite important. Clean my hands first. And then quickly go horizontal. That'll give you a nice blend. So it's down and then it's horizontal. This will give another effect of the water actually moving and going round the corner there. It's just a hint. I'll go across in that corner there, and then I'll just, final bit is just to highlight these branches that come down here. I'm using a bright yellow for that. So I've got the light catching these now. These leaves at the end are being caught by the sun coming through that area. That's why they're quite bright along the edge. Just put a few dots in there. And that'll give us, hopefully, an impression of the light coming. Again, they're very bright. I'll just smudge them back a little bit. So they're not quite as dominant as we want them. Just knock the edge off those. Not pressing on. I've lost the branches, so back to the charcoal step. I'm using a thinner one this time, and I'm going to join these up again, so we get the right impression of the twigs actually coming over the front.
About 10 minutes left, Paul.
All right, I'm done. Nearly. Just a final little bit. I'm going to put some light into this banking, into this path. I'm going to use bright yellow here just to bring little bits of light coming through. And that I'm going to rub down as well. So that's not too bright, but it will just brighten up that corner there. And then more light here. Just bring some of these plants over the top, make them more natural. A few coming up through around the back of there. Rub that down as well. Spread that down so they look like the little plants coming over the side of the water. Just smudge those down so we make them a little bit more in the distance. It's a bit of an impressionist style painting, so we don't want those to be. There is one area that I just need to spark up a bit with the green, and this is this banking. It's quite light on the picture, so I've got to make sure that I reflect that on that banking as well as it comes across, down and behind the trees there. So just use that, make it grass-like, just by pushing the colour up. It's very faded. Need a bit more. In fact, I'll probably put the yellow in there just to make sure that the person looking at the picture is aware that that's strong light coming through there. Just use that, make it into grasses just by a different technique on there. Just rub those down. Sharpen that up. Sharpen up the river going around there. Is that it? Right. We're done. Sorry I couldn't do any more. I would love to carry on, but time doesn't let us do that. So I hope you enjoyed my demonstration of soft pastel painting on Sennelier Sandy Card. Hope to see you again soon.
Do you want to put your mount around it?
Oh, forgot. Right, the mount. Let's see. Where am I going to put this? I'll just move that up. About there. There. Let's go there. That's it. We're done.
Hi, I'm Vic Bearcroft. I've created my half of the postcard and now I'm going to pass it on to my painting partner.
What have you got for me, Vic? Half a skull. What are you trying to say to me, Vic? Are you calling me an old fossil? Okay, let's see what we can do with it.